I think that we are just a little bit early, so I'm going to wait for a couple more minutes to see if anybody else joins in, and then I'm going to turn it over to Miriam here, who is going to give us a presentation on creating virtual visits to national estuarine research reserves and national parks. Okay, and she is the Miriam is the founder and director of Science by the Sea, an educational outreach platform that was established in 1997. And it looks like I know that that's a background, Miriam, but I'm guessing you're still in North Carolina. Is that correct?
I am still in North Carolina.
Okay, sounds good. And she is going to tell us about some of the things that she's done in terms of outreach initiatives. Um, so what I'm going to do, without further ado, is just go ahead and turn it over to Miriam. And I may be admitting folks as we go on. If you have questions, I would ask you to please just post them in the chat room. I'll try and keep track of them. And then at the end of the session, we can go back and Miriam can address them. Okay, and at this point, I am going to go ahead and mute out in both video and audio and turn it over to Miriam. Okay, Miriam, go right ahead.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen, see if you guys will be able to see this. I have no idea. Well, let's do that one. All right, let's see.
Okay, that looks good. Here you go.
Good?
Yep.
I'm gonna minimize my little bar to get it out of the way over here. All right, is everybody good? You're seeing a full screen?
Looks great.
All right. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my little corner of the world. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, I am Miriam Sutton, and I am the director of Science by the Sea, which is a 501c3 organization that provides educational support to academic and general audiences, while also assisting research institutions with broader impacts through education, communication, and outreach. As noted in this particular image, I also spend an enormous amount of time and energy paddling and capturing glimpses of nature from my stand-up paddleboard. I hope today's presentation is going to remind you of just how magical our world is, even when it seems to be flipping upside down at times. I would like to take you for a glide through the Rachel Carson Reserve on my stand-up paddleboard and provide an example of creating a virtual visit to a natural reserve or a park. I've set aside some time at the end of the presentation to address your questions, so keep a track of them in the chat, and I'll assist you in creating your own virtual visit that you can also share with others. All right, so the trick here is to change the slides. That work? Got it. All right, I set my Science by the Sea goals and objectives in January of 2020. I had no idea how important that mission was going to become as 2020 began to unravel before us. I wanted to clarify that the coastal regions also have seasonal changes, not so much in our evergreen trees like our live oaks and our red cedars, but in our shrubs and in our grasses. I wanted to highlight some of the unique species that visit our area each year. I wanted to educate more people about the vital role that estuarine ecosystems play in our water quality and in our food web, in hopes that a better understanding would lead to increases in the stewardship of our environment. The Rachel Carson Reserve is one of 10 coastal reserves in North Carolina, located along the eastern seaboard. We're sort of in the middle cape where the arrow is shown. We have Cape Hatteras to our north and Cape Fear to our south. So we're kind of in the middle. The reserve is due north of the Beaufort Inlet, coming into from Onslow Bay. And it also serves as a major buffer between the land and the sea. The reserve is comprised of 5 main components: Town Marsh, which literally started as a marsh across from town; Carrot Island, which goes down onto the east end; Horse Island, which is just south of Carrot Island; and Bird Shoal, that runs the southern and western boundaries of the reserve. The 5th component, Middlemarsh, you can see in the little inset map down at the bottom, is actually on the other side of the North River Channel. and is 6 acres of nothing but marsh. On my paddleboard, I secure my Nikon 5300 camera into a dry bag. I store my GoPro into a water housing and strap these beneath bungee cords attached to my SUP. My iPhone 12 Pro is tethered to my hydration pack and is secured for easy access should interesting wildlife decide to appear. I've also used a gimbal stabilizer and a phone windsock on the windy days for some of my live feeds in the field. I post my photos and my videos and my live feeds to my social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. So now that we know where we are and what we're doing, let's go exploring. So let's see if this little video will run for you guys. There you go. So people often ask me about the year-round paddling that I do, and my response is always the same. The water is so clear in the winter, and I find new and unique species that I don't often see during warmer months. I use a variety of cold weather gear, including layers, wetsuits, and dry suits to maintain my comfort level during winter paddling. I first discovered these ragged sea hares in Middlemarsh last winter as they were grazing on algal mats throughout the marsh. I was so captivated by their physical appearance that I just sat on my board to observe them for a while. Once back home, I generated this short clip to share the unique experience with the others. One of the things you'll notice as I go through the presentation is that there's a little calendar icon in the bottom left just to kind of let you progress through the year with me and try to observe some of the changes that you're seeing in the images. The marsh grasses and the plants continue their dormant phase through February, while unique gelatinous organisms frequent the reserve during the winter months, including the lion's mane jelly, the mushroom cap jelly, the occasional Portuguese man-o'-war, and also the sea nettles. Winter also brings more bald eagle sightings throughout the reserve. Nesting season begins as winter fades away, and the algae responds quickly to the arrival of spring. They often line the edges of oyster reefs found throughout the reserve. Horse trails are also found through these oyster reefs, as you can see in this image, as well as through the many acres of salt marsh throughout the reserve. The marsh begins to shed its winter wear and greens up as the cold winter days are overcome with the warmth of spring. The diamondback terrapins reappear from their hibernation within the muddy bottom of the tidal creeks that form labyrinths throughout the marshes. And the cow-nosed rays invade the local sounds and inland waters in search of some tasty scallops along their migration routes. Mayflowers and mating season flourish throughout the reserve as the increases in daylight bring the flora and the fauna back to life. River otters are just a few of the mammals found throughout the reserve. Otters include squirrels, rabbits, foxes, coyotes, and the occasional black bear sighting. And of course, the most famous mammals, the horses. The marsh becomes fully dressed in summer greens by June, and the ray and shark sightings increase more frequently. Summer temperatures means it's time to cool off. With a few visits to my mystery boat, I discovered the submerged boat several years ago while paddling during the winter when the waters are crystal clear. I gazed upon the submerged vessel beneath me and made mental notes on the location so that I could return when the water was warmer and take a closer look around. I snorkel on the artificial reef each summer when I can catch a few clear water days. Large flounder, a very large toadfish, and numerous reef fish frequent the vessel, and a large loggerhead sea turtle also visits often. The marsh begins to flower in late summer as the migration of various butterflies and dragonflies begins to invade the reserve. Cloudless sulfurs fly through Beaufort Inlet in a kaleidoscope, while the monarchs, swallowtails, and Gulf flatillaries arrive more scattered. Notice in these images the tops of the marsh grass as it takes on a UV glow from the yellowish white flowers that bloom across the acres of marsh. Each fall since 2014, this great egret, 30T, has graced our presence in the reserve. It comes in the fall, stays through the winter, and then it flies back. And I'm guessing it flies back home where it was originally tagged, and that's Lake Huron in Ontario, Canada. During September, the marsh also begins to transition from its flowering phase to its seeding phase and takes on a copper top across the vast acres of wetland. Over 100 oyster catchers head to the reserve for winter, taking advantage of the oyster harvest available throughout the marshes and tidal creeks. I head out on my stand-up paddleboard to snap a few images each fall, and I enter their banding ID numbers into the American Oyster Catcher Database Program, which is sort of a citizen science type of project. Many of these visitors travel all along the eastern seaboard, and usually after you've entered your data, within a couple of weeks, you'll get an email that tells you where it was originally banded, where other observations have been made for that particular bird. So it's really cool to see how much they move about throughout the year. So while checking on some oysters for later harvest, I was surprised to find a common octopus nestled in the oyster reef. Here he appeared to be occupied with the ingestion of their prey, which I assumed to be a stone crab or possibly a blue crab. But it did remind me of the documentary that came out last year on my teacher octopus, or my octopus teacher, whichever it was. Thousands of black skimmers gather along the sand flats of the reserve during their migration to the southern beaches between Florida and Venezuela. I sit with them often during the fall and am constantly mesmerized by the patterns they create during their synchronous flight, used to prepare them for their journey south. A pair of sandhill cranes have returned to the Rachel Carson Reserve each winter for the past almost a decade now. Their visits are mysterious, since eastern North Carolina is not known to be part of their migration route across North America. During this time, as winter approaches, the green pickleweed that we observed in the summer turns into a bright crimson red for winter. After enduring the confines and restrictions throughout the year 2020, I decided to compile a best of 2020 video to highlight some of the best days on the waters in and around the Rachel Carson Reserve, and to provide a few uplifting moments to a most challenging year. 95% of the images and videos that I capture are from my iPhone or from my GoPro, but occasionally I do whip out the big Nikon for some close-up shots of the birds. I use iMovie video editing software that can add slow motion and filters as needed for underwater video. I add captions and voiceovers on occasion to assist in the education and translation of the material. As you can tell, jellies are one of my favorites. Paddling with sharks is also one of my favorites. It's so fascinating. Sometimes they just flee at the sight of me, but other times they'll give me a few curious passes to try to check me out and see what I really am. I've even had a school of black tips let me participate in their feeding last fall when they were in. They would let me go first because I would drive the bait ball down while I was filming the bait ball, and then they would be down at the bottom waiting to come up and bite. These are the red drum. That's our state fish. This guy was so infatuated trying to catch the crab, he didn't notice I was standing on a board right by him. When the cow nose rays come in, they're so thick sometimes I can't even paddle. I just have to coast, wait for them to get by. I also like to slip up on flounder and poke them with my paddle. See the spots? This was one of the coolest discoveries I made last year. I've never seen one of these in inland waters. I've seen them outside diving, but not so much in the estuarine environment. So there's a flounder right here. You guys can see it. Yep. And this one is almost the size of what they call a doormat flounder. Like you could scrape your feet on it. The best part of dolphins is listening to them breathe. This little guy just leaped up on my paddleboard last fall. He had almost drowned in a gill net and was really struggling in the marsh. And he just started paddling up toward me and just jumped right up on my board. So I paddled him out of the reserve, and he was dry enough he could actually fly a little bit once he got back to the docks. These are our most famous residents. We currently have 26 horses on the reserve. We had a new baby born in April, and we're hoping for a few more this year. Fingers are crossed. So this is truly a magical place, as are many of our other national reserves throughout the country. And I would encourage you to seek nature in your own little corner of the world and share your observations with others. And I will leave you with these words of wisdom from Rachel Carson. Those who dwell as scientists or laymen among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary of life. Thank you. Got any questions? Send them to me.
Okay, we have plenty of time here. If there's any questions from Miriam.
There's questions in the chat, Pete.
Oh, let me see. I think I was just looking there and I didn't. Let me see what we have. Beautifully done. Okay, one, do you use a protective case for your iPhone?
Yeah, it's the iPhone 12 is pretty waterproof, which I actually tested a few weeks ago. Did really well. And then, but I also do have a case, so if it were to, if I don't have it tethered and drop it, it has some cushioning. But I actually keep it tethered. There's these silicone things you can get to wrap around your phone to hook them to your bike handlebars. And I use those. And so I just wrap that around the back of my phone, and then that's attached. I loop a tether line through that. That's also tethered to my hydration packs. And I tuck it in one of my straps on my hydration pack where I can just whip it out really fast and start filming.
Okay, there was one other, it wasn't a question, but it says, oh my God, you have a DSL, no protection on paddleboard, where any goofball jet skiers or boaters could have just enough beer to swamp you someday. Was that ever an issue out there on the paddleboard?
I do see a lot of those people. If you'll notice, like in the image, if it's still sharing my screen, you guys can see where I'm kneeling on the paddleboard with my camera out. Can you guys see that? Yeah,
I can, I think. Yep, there okay. You are.
So yeah, so I rarely bring the camera out when I'm standing.
Okay.
I typically get inside the marsh somewhere where I'm going to shoot, and then get down on my knees or even onto my butt, and then get my camera out and, kneel or sit and take shots. Okay. But I'm not usually in a lot of boat traffic when I whip out the big camera.
Okay, that's probably good. Another question: are your live stream Fridays always at the same time?
No, they are not, because my life is not on a really great schedule. And I kind of, when I can get out there and get out there, I go. And so it's been kind of random. Um, the other concern I have with the live feeds on Facebook is I can't, those are really hard for me to use in some of the other outreach pieces that I do. I have to basically link back to Facebook. And if I'm in a classroom setting working with some kids or something, and that can present some obstacles because of trying to access Facebook where live feeds are. So I'm trying to sort of move away from that if I can, and just do some other type of Science by the Sea reflection videos. And those allow me to actually add more information into the video and do some editing, which sometimes you can't do in the field when you're live. I still love the live stuff, especially when something really cool, like when the cormorant jumped up on my board, I immediately jumped on and went live because I said, nobody's going to believe this, but there's a cormorant that's just jumped on my board for a ride out of the marsh. So.
Okay, another one. Do you think this is transferable to other national estuarine research reserves and parks around the country?
I think it is. And you can do it land-based. You don't have to be balancing on a paddleboard, to do these kind of things. Just, I mean, you go on vacation, and even if you're not going to do live feeds, you can just do little video clips and take some images while you're on vacation. And then bring those back. And I'm just using iMovie, just the basic platform that comes on, your MacBooks, but just use a basic video editing software and just put a little thing together. Don't make it too long because, attention spans, they're just kind of, they're short. And just, throw something out there, put some tags on it to try to attract more attention. Yeah.
Okay, and you said you use a dry suit sometimes?
In the winter, it gets kind of chilly.
Okay.
So I started using running gear first. And then I started putting a dry suit on top of the running gear. And then sometimes when it's really cold and I just can't stop myself from going out there, I'll have the running layers, the wetsuit layer, and the dry suit on top for really
Okay.
cold days.
And I guess this last question here, I guess applies if it's getting really cold or there are a lot of crazy boaters or jet skiers out there. Have you ever filmed using a camera on a drone?
I have a drone. I just don't use it very much because the airport is like,
Okay, yeah.
really close.
Okay, are there any further questions? Okay, yes, Joseph, if you want to unmute and or just put it in the chat or.
I was just showing clapping hands. Very well
Oh,
done.
okay. All right. I thought you were raising
That's
your
what,
hand.
no, it wasn't a raised hand. It was very well done. My curiosity, though, is over the years, what changes have you seen due to warming waters?
We've got some sections of the reserve on the Carrot Island end, the eastern end, that are struggling a little bit to keep up with sea level rise. Some of what I've been able to observe, because I am out there so much, but I still love it, is a couple of the little marsh islands that have struggled the most. The whole horse herd came down to them last year, and we're still not really sure why. Usually the different social groups are spread out all across the reserve, from Town Marsh, Bird Shoal, Horse Island, Carrot Island. But for whatever reason, last year, they all kind of shifted for a good part of the year. Maybe that was where they were quarantining for COVID. I don't really know. But they all came down to the Carrot Island end. And there's a lot of marsh on the Carrot Island end. There's not a lot of marsh they can reach. It's in really mucky, sticking, like get stuck in it and die kind of mud. So they really can't access it. So the pieces they could access around Carrot Island end, they ate it to death. And that included a couple of smaller marsh islands that have really struggled this year to try to regain themselves. So I don't know that it's totally caused by changes in our sea level, but possibly a combination of a little too much munching to go with that.
Okay, anything? Oh, Diana has a question. She says, can I come visit when CT, the Connecticut National Estuarine Research Reserve opens? And I think that's from Sandra Bilbo to everybody, and Diana answers yes. Sandra and everyone. Okay.
Yeah, so so Miriam, we're hopefully gonna have our Connecticut Estuarine Research Reserve sometime next year. So I'm hoping to, I'm not gonna be able to do it in winter. It's a little too cold up here. But yeah, I'm hoping to maybe be able to use some of what I learned here to do it in Connecticut. And yes, come on up, everybody, in about a year.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, Diane, are you gonna get on a paddleboard too, or?
Yeah, I've always wanted to stand up paddleboard, and this may be my time.
This could be it. Yeah, it's a great way to slip up on wildlife. I'll put it that way.
I bet. Yeah, and I have a really expensive Canon camera, so yeah, I'm watching you and your Nikon, trying to learn from that.
Yeah, and I don't go on really rough days. I mean, I pick my days, and I do a lot of photography. And when I have photo shows, and people will go, "I can't believe you're out there doing this on your paddleboard." I said, "Well, you look at the water that's in all of these images. It's not breaking white caps. I mean, it's calm water. So you just kind of have to pick your days."
Yeah, we don't have as much of that up here, but I'll find it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much, Miriam, for the presentation. Certainly is a beautiful part of the country. I have never been to North Carolina in the Outer Banks, but I intend to get down there soon. And so thank you again, and good luck in the rest of 2021 here. And for everybody else, thank you very much for attending.
Yep.
And as I'm
coming,
sure
guys.
you all, as I'm sure you're all aware, this has been recorded, so you can go back if there was any portion of that you missed. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
All right. See you guys. Bye.